Really what I want to focus on this morning. As I began, got all kinds of glitches here. There we go. As I began to think about this lesson and try to write it and get my thoughts together, I began really with the idea of God providing for us, His providence. And I trust God to provide. God's providence fills me with hope. So I don't have to be overwhelmed. It fills me with confidence, patience in my trials. Like I can keep on going because I know God is providing in physical and spiritual ways for me. It shows His amazing love for me at every single turn in life. And so from there, I began to think, well, when do I need confidence? When do I need to know about God's love and to remember, oh yeah, I am a son of the King. It's in my struggles. That's when. In my good times too. But as I began to think about providence and struggles and dealing with struggles, I thought about the Corinthians. In the second letter that we have to the Corinthians are upset. They are not happy with Paul. And we know that because Paul kind of seems to reason with them. In verses 15 through 17, he kind of reasons with them, or I think that's maybe the best way to put it. He says, in this confidence, I intended to come to you before that you might have a second benefit. To pass by way of you to Macedonia, to come again from Macedonia to you, and to be helped by you on my way to Judea. Bill, could you click the slide for me? Yeah, so if you can imagine, and if I can do this mirror image for you, you have the Aegean Sea here, and you have Corinth and Achaia, and Athens is right in here, and then Macedonia is on up here. And as you come around the top of the Aegean Sea, and there's Troas on this side, and then you come back down, there's Ephesus down here. That's not the image, that's my image. Ephesus is over here, Corinth is over here. So Paul is saying, well, I was going to sail over here, go up to Macedonia, come back down, and then go back home. But instead, what he ends up doing is he goes north to Troas, and he goes around through Macedonia, then he comes down to Corinth and goes back. They're upset. Paul, you said you were coming. What happened? A couple things he tells them were a factor in this decision as this plays out. Verse 23, he says, moreover, I call God to witness against my soul that to spare you I came no more to Corinth. It was for your sake. I didn't want to rebuke you. You have things going on. You have the man with his father's wife that needs to be taken care of. You have, 1 Corinthians, litany of issues they need to deal with. And Paul says, I would rather come and say, you did a great job getting these things in order. I want to come and encourage, to praise you. I don't really want to come and just get on your case. And he says basically the same thing in verse 1 of chapter 2. I determined within myself I would not come to you again in sorrow. In verse 12 of chapter 2, we learn that an effective door for the gospel is open in Troas. So it's almost like there was something else. As much as he wanted to go to Corinth, as much as it was bothering him, and the cares and concerns of how they were doing spiritually weighed him down, he still felt the need to go to Troas and take that opportunity to preach Christ where he'd never been able to go before. So he went up and he did that. But he's still anxious to hear from them. In verse 13, he says, I had no rest in my spirit because I did not find Titus my brother, But taking leave of them, I departed for Macedonia. So he's gone up to Troas. Titus is actually coming from Corinth to see him. And we're going to find out in chapter 7 that it's really news of them, news of the Corinthians, that he's worried about getting from Titus. And he went ahead and went up to Troas, took care of that opportunity, but he's still burdened because he doesn't know what's going on in Corinth. If you remember some of the lists that Paul put together of the trials that he had, he was shipwrecked, he was beaten and left for dead, he was beaten with 40 stripes minus one by the Jews many times. But he says, and besides all this, my care and concern for the churches is a burden that weighs me down. Corinth has got to be one of the top ones he's talking about. They've got to be one of the ones that was most on his mind. So, with all of that going on, he finally made it to them. But let's see here. Let's look in chapter 7. What Paul finally heard when Titus caught up with him in Macedonia was excellent news. I'll start in verse 6 here. Nevertheless, God, who comforts the downcast, comforted us by the coming of Titus, and not only by his coming, but also by the consolation with which he was comforted in you, when he told us of your earnest desire, your mourning, your zeal for me, so that I rejoiced even more. So, awesome news from Corinth. They have been turning to the Lord. They've been giving their hearts to him, doing what they were supposed to do, getting things in order. So, as we think about all of this, how does God's providence tie into this? How do we see God working in this situation? Well, Paul wanted to go to Corinth, and the Corinthians wanted Paul to come. They're kind of upset he didn't come, but God knew they needed time to kind of process what Paul had written to them, to put it into place, to start obeying it, to start putting it to work in their lives. And so God opens a door, and this is not your image, this is my image on the map again, sorry. A door for the gospel to be preached in Troas. Everybody benefits. As Romans 8:28 says, all things work together for good for those who believe, those who love God. So, people in Troas had the gospel preached. People in Corinth learned to wait on Paul and also get everything together that they needed to, start obeying and putting things in practice. And then Paul probably already knew this, but he learned once again and got some practice in doing what God wanted him to do rather than what he wanted to do. If I'm Paul, I want more than anything else to go fix it. Anybody else a fixer in here? I want to go make it right. I want to fix it. I want my hands on the problem. I want to be there. I want to teach. I want to train. I want to help. And God apparently knew that they needed some time. So Paul's not in control. Not only does God want to give us his Spirit, and maybe this picture can help us think about having God's Spirit inside of our minds and making our thoughts closer to his thoughts. Not only does God want to give us his Spirit, and I say this not in the sense of becoming a God or becoming God, but in the sense of becoming more like God and sharing his thoughts, sharing his desires, right? Not only does he want to share the closest relationship humanly possible with us, he also is actively working in our lives every single day through this thing that we often refer to as providence. And that's what I want to get across this morning. It's not just me doing what I'm supposed to do for God. God is actively trying to find out what can I do for my children? What can I do for these sons and daughters that I love? What do they need next? How can things go in their lives so that they get to the next step in their spiritual journey? Are we on this mic? Gotcha. It's picking up on that. All right. So, as we speak of being one with God, as we consider that idea, we want to trust God's results. There are so many things that mess me up in life, and it's not really 24/7, usually for me, but it's moments, and those moments color the whole day, and the days color how I feel about how my life is going, and actually they really influence how I perceive myself and who I think I am and how successful or I am in life, or how well I'm doing in life in whatever way. And uncertainty can turn into fear and worry, which can turn into being overwhelmed and unhappy and hopeless, which over time brews into a mixture of bitterness and misplaced anger on my part. We worry about many things. Each of these categories that I'm going to say has so many facets to it. Health, my health, the health of my loved ones, the people, maybe I'm caring for someone. Financial issues. There's debt, paying bills, economic insecurity, and so much more. Relationships, work and school, future life events. Changes are coming up. I'm not sure how all of that's going to go. Social situations. I can have a fear of judgment. I can be embarrassed. I can just feel awkward, like I don't fit in social situations. And even trauma and stressful events, while they may not be in the front of my mind in every moment, if I have that weighing me down, it really changes my day-to-day experience. And a lot of times there are triggers that come up that really are difficult. I need to trust God, because really all of these things are out of my control in a big way. I go to work, but that doesn't guarantee I bring home a paycheck. I can care for people who are sick, but that doesn't guarantee they're going to get well. I could take them to the doctor. Also, doesn't always work out the way we would want it to. I can make a budget, but that doesn't always mean unexpected bills don't come up. So with all of these, really, ultimately, we need a power as large as the universe itself to control these things for us. So the next step here is to release. I release trying to control, because God is able. He gets better results than I do. And a matter of fact, when I try to fix it myself, I make a worse mess a lot of times. You ever notice that? Being frustrated by how hard everything is, or maybe just a particular facet of my life is, a lot of times I hurt other people in trying to get relief for myself. I don't have the understanding or the ability to get the best results. I can't even get the results I want, much less know what the best result would even be. If you'd asked Paul what would be the best result right now with Corinth, I suspect he would have said, well, the best thing would be if I go and teach them and help them through their problems. And the Corinthians would have said, he said he was coming. Where's he at? Okay. And God said, go to Troas, somewhere that's not even on the map for you right now, not in your plans, not in your thoughts. Go to Troas. I don't even know what would be best most of the time. Remember Romans 8:28. All things work together for good for those who love God. Do you believe that? We intellectually believe it, right? Do we feel the truth of that statement that no matter what happens, whether we go to Troas or whether the worst case scenario that we fear comes to pass in our lives, that is good because God knows what's going on and He's got this. Release control. I think it was one of you who said this. Control is an illusion. And in so many ways, that's true. Yeah, I can pick out the clothes I wear, but at the end of the day, all the big things that I want to go a certain way can be changed by factors outside of my control. So I want to leave you. I want this word acceptance to soak in today. Acceptance. Acceptance. When people hurt me, well, that's a thing that happens in life. I really need to accept it. And I need to trust God that He's got some plan for this hurt in my life. And I need to trust God that He can help me overcome the hurt. Process it, move past it, get stronger because of it. I need to release and accept that the things that I want that I don't have, if God hasn't given it to me, I don't need it. Joshua read Matthew 6 this morning. Appreciate that. Verse 33 is a verse that's been very impactful and pivotal in my life. But seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things shall be added to you. I think Jesus recognizes it's legitimate for me to be worried about not having food. It's legitimate for me to be worried about my clothes are falling apart and I don't have any money to buy more. Legitimate to be worried about dehydration. Okay? And so He says, if you pay attention and put first the spiritual things, the things of God's kingdom, living the righteous life, I'll take care of the physical things, and you don't have to spend your hours, your days, your emotional energy worrying about those things. I got that. And that really empowers us and enables us then to focus on those spiritual things. In Philippians chapter 4, Paul is talking, and I do want to turn there. Paul is talking. He says, catch up with myself here, chapter 4 and verse 11. Paul says, not that I speak in regard to need. So he's commending the Philippian Christians for sending support to him. And he says, not that I speak in regard to need, for I have learned in whatever state I am to be content. There's acceptance in the word content. He says, verse 12, I know how to be abased and I know how to abound. Everywhere and in all things I have learned to be both full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. He says, when I'm hungry and I don't have enough food to eat, that's not a problem. That's okay. Is that the way I think? Okay, is that the way you think? You might know more about the way you think than the way I think. When I'm hungry, am I accepting of that? That's okay. It's okay to be hungry. That's fine. God's got this. There is something visceral on a gut level that my brain says, no, if I'm hungry, there's an emergency. Go get food now. And if you ever intentionally fast, you know what I'm talking about. Your brain's just like, wait, survival mode, go get food. And Paul says, no, I'm fine. I don't need food. God's got this. Whew. Acceptance. I'm hungry right now and it's okay. This happened and it's okay. I'm worried, but it's going to be okay because God's got this. I'm content. All right. So, being one with God, as we give our worries to God, really what we end up doing is filling ourselves with the Holy Spirit. Let me track that for you. Right, while we're here in Philippians chapter 4, we see Euodia and Syntyche have this squabble between themselves, this animosity, enmity, fighting between themselves, okay? And Paul shows them the path to peace. But the cool thing is, this is the path to peace, whether it's a squabble that's upsetting you, or whether it's a need that's unmet, or whether it's a temptation, a sin, maybe you're weighed down with something, consequences of your own actions. Whatever it is, this is still the path to peace. It's going to work for them, and it's going to work for us in other situations as well. So, in verse 4, Paul says, "Rejoice in the Lord always." Again, I will say, rejoice. And you might remember the guy on the last slide and all of the worries that were in his mind. Can he rejoice? No, he can't. And Paul knows that. Paul knows that the natural human condition is not stress-free, worry-free, performing at our emotional peak. No, our natural state is there's a bunch of stuff going on, and it's weighing me down. And rejoice sounds just as out of place in our everyday lives as it does in a funeral parlor. And that ought not to be so. So how can we rejoice? And Paul says, yeah, I know it's not natural, but I'm going to tell you again, rejoice. Verse 5, he's going to tell us how we can get to a point where this is has a more natural place in our life to rejoice. Let your gentleness be known to all men. The Lord is at hand. As we began having acceptance of the things that happen and being content with the way things are and trusting God that it's going to be okay, we come to a more rational frame of mind. We are more emotionally stable. We can take the storms better because everything is already good. Think about Euodia and Syntyche in this particular example here. When they're fighting with each other and they begin to talk about that with their friends, and well, yeah, she just, not only does she rub me the wrong way, but she's a bad person. And she did this and she did that. And this is, if she wouldn't do, the things that she's doing to me, then I wouldn't have a problem and I would be fine. There's a little bit of insanity there. We're not thinking in a reasonable, clear, even-handed, fair manner. Because in our brains, we're supporting this animosity. And so we're now justifying the animosity. And we're justifying ourselves where we're at. That's not clear-headed. That's not level-headed. That's not reasonable. But it's what we do naturally when we have an issue. And we do the same thing with every other problem in our lives. We'll go back to being hungry. Well, if I wasn't hungry, I wouldn't be angry at you right now. I wouldn't be hangry. If I had enough money, I wouldn't be worried about my finances. Well, maybe. Or maybe we would have filled up our budget with some other stuff and we'd still be where we're at. It's not the external that's going to fix things. And so we need to get the internal right. And we can only do that through Jesus Christ. Let your gentleness be known to all men, your reasonableness. Now verse 6, he says, be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. That's really where our slide comes in. The person here in the slide is giving everything that used to be a burden in his mind to God. And yes, that means you pray about it, but it means a lot more than that. You pray about it and you tell God, here's this thing, and I'm going to give it to you, and I'm not going to take it back. I'm going to give it to you, and it's not my problem anymore. I'm going to give it to you, and I'm going to trust you that you'll take care of it. When we give it to God, we need to make sure we don't steal it back from him, because now it's his. It doesn't belong to us anymore. This is the key. Now, I said I would link this to being one with God, and we'll do that now. What does God want for us? What does he say he wants for us? What does he show us in our lives as we walk with him over the years that he wants for us? He wants peace. He wants to give us joy. He wants to give us strength to get through trials. That's called long-suffering. Matter of fact, if we look at the fruits of the Spirit, he wants to make us beautiful people, living at our highest potential that he created us for in his image, to be like him. He wants us to be one with him. And so, as we give our troubles and our problems to him, and we become those beautiful, well-rounded people, day by day, month by month, one step at a time, we are becoming, we are adopting the same goals for ourselves that he has for us. We're becoming one mind with him. So that is how we, trusting God is being one with him. We want the same things he wants for our lives. All right. A lot of times, I'm going to say this. I kind of alluded to it earlier. I'm going to say this. You know what does not bring peace? Giving our troubles to God brings peace. And trusting him brings peace. And it's really hard. Because what do? We give it to God, and then we start worrying about it again. And every time it comes up, we have to tell ourselves, nope, remember, that's okay now because I gave it to God. It's the maintenance that we have to do with ourselves. That's what works. What does not work is making excuses, trying to find answers, figuring out how we can fix the problem. Now, there are things that we need to do in life, caveat, okay? I do need to go to work, right? I do need to balance my checkbook. Yeah, I know that's the old way to say that now. Yes, there are things I need to do, and I don't want to take away from that, but I do what I'm supposed to do knowing that God's going to bless that and actually make it work, and the making it work part comes from him. So, what does not work is saying, if other people would just treat me the way they want to be treated, we wouldn't have this problem. If other people would do what they were supposed to, then I wouldn't have this stress and this issue in my life. Because my joy and my contentment are not dependent on others doing what they're supposed to do. And that's really hard to accept. I know, because I've been there. Doing other people treating me is not actually going to give me joy and contentment. It's not actually going to solve the problem. The way I can get joy and contentment is giving my problems to God. So in our text here in Philippians, Euodia might be at peace with God and at peace with life and at peace with herself because she has done what Paul said and given this problem to him. And she's going to do what she's supposed to no matter what. No matter what. She's going to do what she's supposed to, and she's going to be filled with God's joy because she can see his love for her every single day. She's focused on, verse 8, whatever things are noble, just, pure, lovely, good report, virtue. whatever's praiseworthy. She's meditating, thinking, filling her mind up with these things. This is what I need to hear. That's why I'm giving this lesson this morning. I can even revisit and reprocess the trauma that I've received in the past with this method by giving it to God, with looking at for His purpose, looking for the benefit, looking for the good, looking for how He has healed me, looking for how I'm moving forward in life, what God's doing with me. Now, I said the word trauma, so I'm going to say the word abuse. If you're being abused, there's a time to get out of the situation. Okay, that's not what the lesson's about, but I'm going to go ahead and make that note. I'm not saying that just praying about the abuse you're receiving is the answer. That's not what we're saying here. Sometimes you need to get out of that situation and away from the abuse. What I am saying is that internally, as you process that going forward, these things are the answer. Giving it to God, focusing on His love, focusing on His relationship with you and what He's doing in your life and where He's leading you in the future is going to help. It's not easy, but it's possible. So we want to fill ourselves up with God's Spirit. This morning we haven't really talked about the gospel message, so I'm going to spend a minute doing that. There's a crazy segue from what we just talked about to Jesus saving us. I said a bunch of times, this is hard. This is not easy. This is a challenge. But yet, it's what we need to do. That correlates to the death that we die in baptism. That correlates to Christ's death, where He emptied Himself of His own interest, His own things, and died on the cross for my sins. I need to join myself to that kind of mindset, that attitude. I need to die to what's holding me back from being one with God. I need to die to the hurt. I need to die to the pain. I need to die to what I want. I need to die to all of these things that are giving me anxiety in my life. And I need to be united with God. We did talk about that. Isn't that the idea of being buried with Christ, being submerged, overwhelmed in the water? That's where we find unity with Christ, in the burial. And sometimes we're overwhelmed with everything going on in life so that we can remember to be united with Jesus, because that's where the peace and the answers are. That's where the joy is. That's where the new life is. Then we rise to walk a new life. We rise out of the waters of baptism, rise from the death of our old mindset to the life of a new mindset. Death, burial, resurrection is the gospel message. It's what Jesus did for us. It's what we have to unite with to be saved, to have our sins forgiven, to have a new life here and even more so in heaven, to live with God forever. If you are here and you're not sure of your relationship with Him, you need to be buried with Him. You need to die with Him and rise to walk a new life in baptism. And if you've been baptized and you find that your life is not in sync with Him, you need to reunite with the death, burial, and resurrection. Whichever piece of that is out of place in your life, that's what you need to reunite with. If you have any spiritual need, please come as we stand and sing.